living a should life comes from a place of expectation rather than alignment. It's doing what you feel you should.
Welcome, mompreneurs, to another episode of the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Mishuli, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode where I share my interview with lifestyle expansion coach Melissa Jirovec. But before I get started with the interview, I want to invite you to do a few things. Number one, if you are enjoying this podcast and the content I create, if you could please leave the podcast a review. That not only allows other mompreneurs and entrepreneurs to find the podcast, but it helps let us know that we're creating content that resonates with you, which is really our goal. Then number two, I want to invite you to check out my new website, mombusinesscoach.com. I have some free resources for mompreneurs there and ways to connect with me should you want to do that. And then number three, I want to invite you to get a device, notes app, whatever you use to take notes, pen and paper, if you're going to go old school, which actually I prefer, to take some notes for this episode because Melissa shares some wonderful tips. As I mentioned, Melissa is a lifestyle expansion coach, but she's also a certified breathwork and meditation facilitator who's passionate about supporting self-led women building incredible businesses and also creating and building a lifestyle that is deeply aligned, empowering, liberating, expansive, supportive, and nourishing. Through self-advocacy education, practical lifestyle tips, strategic self-management, expansive embodiment practices, and unearthing shifting, limiting beliefs and patterns, Melissa's aim is to ensure that women do not get lost in the hustle, productivity, and noise of the world, but instead progress towards a fully liberated life by honoring self-expression, energy, intuition, and important needs, while also being deeply compassionate and embracing the messiness of being human. That is a lot, but Melissa, as you will tell in this interview, has a wealth of knowledge and wisdom to share with us. So I hope you enjoy this interview. And without further ado, here is my conversation with Melissa Jirovec. I am overwhelmed with delight to talk to you. Time is our most precious asset. We don't get it back. So when somebody shares time with me, I'm so appreciative of that. So thank you for being on the podcast. I can't wait to delve into some of the questions I have for you. You're a life coach, you're an author, you're a mom, you're a host of your own podcast, Thoughts Disrupted, which I enjoy. I'm so glad I found it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background and your experience?
Sure. So first off, thank you for having me. My background is actually in healthcare. Mm-hmm. So I used to be a registered nurse once upon a time, and it was not the right career for me. And I very much struggled in that space. And my husband had a really bad accident about 8.5 years ago and developed a traumatic brain injury. So I left nursing to take care of him and started just questioning everything. I mean, becoming a caregiver stops all of your life. Now your life is about somebody else. And I started thinking about how I was spending my time and how I was treating myself and what it is that I really wanted to do in the world. And so I embarked on a personal growth journey, got really into personal development. And then I ended up in mindset stuff and said, you know what, I'm loving this. I'm absorbing it like a sponge. I'd love to do some coaching. And it's something that I can do from home while I'm at home with my partner and then, one kid and two kids. So I became a mindset coach.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of mindset work is so powerful. But I always felt like there was a piece missing. And so my coaching has evolved over time to where it is today, where I do lifestyle coaching with women. And we focus primarily on self-honoring and self-management, which I think are just two really beautiful, powerful personal skills that every woman should have.
Mm. Yes, definitely. I really love when you talk about like your story. It's like, was that really the accident with your husband and caretaking? Was that just like the pivotal moment? Because we really tend to have something that forces us to change and begin to question everything. So was was there a time before that you kind of beginning to think about things, or was that really just the point where you're like, I need to make some changes?
Yeah. I mean, I was in this nursing job. My
Mm,
father had paid for my education. So
mm,
I was never going to leave because I felt an obligation. I had been given this.
mm,
And, but I was so anxious. I couldn't sleep before a shift. I couldn't deal with being short staffed all the time and not being able to spend the time with people that I felt I needed to. And it was slowly chipping away at my mental health, but I never would have left. It took an accident to physically get me out of it, because I just felt like I have this job and I'm making this money, and like, who am I? I could never leave, and I wouldn't have. So the accident definitely, and I didn't have any confidence either. I didn't believe in myself.
mm,
So becoming a caregiver, I had to speak up for him because it was his life, or it was life or death.
mm-hmm.
And it taught me how to use my voice and how to stand up for what I think is right in terms of health and well-being, and you're like just standing up for your own life in general.
Mm-hmm. I love it when women share stories like that, because I think it's a story that so many women live. I myself, have found myself in a corporate job and in a corporate life that I felt obligated to, very much like you did, but for different reasons. And how we incorporate that into and we don't question it until something comes along. So I read that your coaching has a focus on liberating women from this should life, which it sounds like you and I have both lived.
Yeah.
And, to heal that disconnection and add more oomph, as you say, to everyday life, to move towards a vision of living a life more on their terms with abundance and joy. My gosh, can you imagine what we're supposed to be happy? So,
Oh,
I mean, but that word liberating, when I read that statement, it's so true. We need to learn how to just break free from this life that has either been created for us or we just co-sign without even considering, being intentional and purposeful about it. So, what I wanted to ask you was, what are some of the tools that you can empower yourself from that? But I think what's really important to first think about is so many people don't realize that they're living that should life. So how can somebody start to recognize that? I mean, listening to this podcast is probably an indication that you realize you need to make some changes. But what are some of the things? Because I think that that's what people really connect with, is how something feels at a certain time. So, what are some of those things that people can look to realize that they need to make some changes.
Yeah. I mean, living a should life comes from a place of expectation rather than alignment. It's doing what you feel you should. And you can look at many different areas of your life and see how you feel in those spaces. How do you feel in your job? Do you feel you are being engaged? Do you feel your strengths are being utilized? Do you feel that your voice is being heard? How does it feel to wake up in the morning and go do that work? Right? And where are you settling? Are you doing it for a paycheck, or are you doing it because it's work where you feel you can bring value to the world? I know in terms of career, that's where it hit me hardest. And what changing that story looked like for me was looking at my career and saying, am I paying a price to be in this career? And the answer was yes. The price that I was paying was my mental health. The price that I was paying was very much becoming my physical health. And was it worth it to pay that price for money, given there are so many ways that we can make money today? And the answer was no. And so I think those are really good questions to start with, and they can be applied to any area, right? Is this relationship costing me something, or is it providing me with something? Are the things I'm doing in terms of my well-being and my health, am I actually healthy and feeling well, or am I not?
Yeah. And, particularly in people that I know who work in healthcare, they can talk themselves out of it because they're codependent on their ability to make at least an impact in the patients that they can serve in some limited way. So what do you think if somebody is working in a job where they are seeing some impact, and they do have an impact, and they do have an important job like a nurse or a doctor or a caretaker? What are some of the things that you think maybe can help them kind of break from that codependency?
I think it's really important to take a look at it. Like, these jobs are very challenging.
Yeah.
And, you're not going to jump out of bed in the morning every single morning to go do a job like that. And that doesn't mean that it's not right for you.
Right.
But I think it comes down to, can I support myself in my personal life to the point where this is worth it, right? So if I'm carrying a lot of stress from my job, am I able to go home and regulate my nervous system and move out that stressful energy? Am I able to replenish myself and manage my energy around this job that is taking a lot from me, so that, which would make it worth it?
Right.
Or is it that no matter what I do at home, no matter how much I try to support myself, I'm losing more than I'm gaining? That the fulfillment is not there, because there are a lot of people in the healthcare in these really important positions who are so burnt out. It is not their fault, but having been on both sides of the bed, having been a nurse and then having been a caregiver, the impact that you're having on people's life and the negative impact that you can have if you're struggling in your job. And this is not to shame anybody again, but you have to take that into consideration. If you're not in the right space and you're caring for people in vulnerable positions, the damage you can do is absolutely incredible. And so at some point, you have to figure out if you can support yourself in the personal to do the professional, or if it's time to walk away.
Right. No, I think that is so true. And it's such an important lesson that you really have to think about yourself. I mean, it goes for a mom or anybody else, whatever you're doing. If you're depleting yourself, you're not helping anybody. And ultimately, you could be causing more harm. If you're in a position to save somebody's life or something like that, you really have to speak up. And that's hard for us as women, right? Yes, advocating for ourselves.
It is, because we've been programmed to sit down and take it, right? Like, if you take a look at when a girl gets her period, it's like, too bad if you have cramps, if you're not feeling good, if your energy is down. You're expected to go to school, you're expected to go to work, you're expected to produce the way you do when you feel perfect, because we're trying to be like men here. So It's you get taught. And then when you're a mom, right? When you're a mom and you have your babies, as soon as the baby is born, you've just gone through this like mind-shattering birth event. But
Yes.
nobody cares, right? They want
Right.
to, even the medical people, they're looking after the baby. Nobody's hooking mom up with a counselor to talk to her about her experience. Nobody's
Yeah.
hooking mom up with a pelvic floor physiotherapist so her body can heal properly. Nobody's hooking mom up with a like a breastfeeding consultant. She has to find that herself if she's lucky,
Right.
right? You're taught to just suck it up, right? Don't cry, don't be emotional, just
Yep.
plow through. And so taking care of yourself is rebelling against that programming that tells you just keep swimming. And
Right.
and it doesn't help anybody.
Right.
And so at some point you kind of have to go like, okay, this expectation that doesn't serve me. So
Mm-hmm.
why am I gonna keep going with that, right? But
Right.
it is a rebellion and it's hard.
Right. I mean, we don't have to get too much in the weeds, but what are some of the ways that you empower women to kind of begin to live life more on their terms?
I think the first thing that's really important is starting to schedule time in your week where you have nothing that you need to do. Right? That in itself is the beginning of the
Right.
that in itself,
Mm-hmm.
scheduling time for yourself, like an
Mm-hmm.
appointment,
Right.
and using that time to do things that allow you to ground and reconnect to yourself. So there are different ways in which, as women, we have to start rebuilding the connection to ourselves. One of
Mm-hmm.
those things is the breath. We have to reconnect back to our breath.
Mm-hmm.
Breathing is foundational. A lot of us carry a lot of stress and anxiety, and we
Mm-hmm.
actually don't breathe properly.
Mm-hmm.
So reconnecting to the breath allows you to move out that energy that doesn't feel good. It can
Mm-hmm.
take you from a stress response to a relaxed response. And it anchors you into presence and your mind stops going for a minute because you're thinking about the breath.
Mm-hmm.
A second piece is reconnecting to your body. And this is really important because our bodies send us signals. If you don't know if something is right for you, your body can tell you if you're paying attention, if you have that awareness. And
Right.
when we honor where we're at with our bodies, our
Mm-hmm.
energy, all that stuff, then we know what to do. There's an intuition in our bodies. And so some of that um, looks like paying attention to what we feel. It looks like thinking about what does my body need right now?
Mm-hmm.
And it also means reconnecting to how we move our bodies and how we express with our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Energy is another big one. Like, where's my energy at?
Yeah.
Right? Am I going to keep plowing through with this really low energy, or am I going to start managing my energy? Okay, tomorrow I've got to work. This kid has this sport. The groceries need to be done. I'm going to be super drained. What am I doing when I first wake up to make sure I've got full energy, something that's going to energize me? What am I doing at the end of the day to release all of that chaotic energy so I'm not waking up the next day from an already depleted place, right? And so these are a lot of things to think about, but it becomes about creating a lifestyle where you're reconnecting and you're booking the time like an appointment again,
Mm-hmm.
where you're just honoring yourself and managing yourself so that you don't lose all your resources.
Yeah, I think that that's what's really critical about that quiet time where you're not giving anybody anything else. And I mean, quiet downtime, man, in a time when we are so connected to devices and constantly on the go and we're addicted to being busy. Um,
Yeah.
that is more important than ever right now. And, for myself, I know that through my experiences too, you can lose connection with what is normal or, in just understanding that if your body is having that reaction, don't just accept it as everybody everybody is like this, or everybody hates their job, or everybody feels sick to go to work on Monday or whatnot. It doesn't have to be that way. So I think that is a very simple and free way to just start a reset. I love that advice. So let's talk about, as a coach, and I have helped coach some women myself, I really love this idea of like meeting people where they're at and kind of empowering them to coach themselves. So talk about that, because I think anybody who's looking for a coach, I think that that's something really critical in considering, is this coach going to have my best interest, or are they just doing things to promote themselves? Are they really going to give me the tools to coach myself and be reliant on myself and to make me aware of my behaviors? And so can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize that the coaching industry is very diverse, and it's also going through a very big shift. You, as a potential client, you have to be very, very clear on what it is that you want, and very discerning when it comes to marketing and seeing what that person's all about. Mm-hmm. So to start off with, there are coaches who teach a skill, mm-hmm. right? If you're a business owner, you might get a marketing coach to help you with your marketing. They're teaching you a skill, right? They're not holding space for all your emotions. They're teaching you how to market. They're more in a teacher role. Mm-hmm. Then there are coaches who have these open spaces where they are taking you in, they are providing ideas, but the ideas are meant for you to have your own reflections. In the group spaces, in one-on-one spaces, it looks like you come to them and you share with them what's going on in your life, what feelings are coming up, what you're struggling with, and they help you through that by offering you questions, offering you reflections, or holding space for you where sometimes you're not looking for advice, right? You go to your best mm-hmm. friend and you're telling her about what's going on with you. You don't necessarily want her advice or for her to tell you what she mm-hmm. thinks. You might just want to be seen. You might mm-hmm. just want to be heard, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're getting a lifestyle coach, you're getting someone who is opening that space up for you to get what you need so that you can make the choices that you want to make, but they're not mm-hmm. telling you what choices you should be making. So as a potential client, am I looking for a coach who's going to teach me how to do something? Or am I looking for a coach who's going to expand me, hold space for me? And you're not going to get a tangible result from that, because it's really going to be about how willing am I to share honestly what's going on with me? How willing am I to dive deep into this work, which is challenging and uncomfortable? And am I willing, right? And am I willing to do the work that's going to change whatever it is I want to change, or care for myself in a way that I may need to? So the type of coach that you need is really important. The marketing is also really important, to be very discerning. Right? We want to look at people we want to hop into spaces with people that we feel would help us, would be expansive for us. There used to be trends in the coaching industry where people were sharing their income, right? I'm a mm-hmm. 6-figure coach, and people would assume if you're making 6 figures, you must know what you're talking about. We're now starting to realize, no, that's not the case. And it's not about the money that you're spending. It's about, do you jive with that person? Do you believe that they can help you in some way? And especially if you're not going after a tangible result, if you're looking for that expansion, that support, then you want to make sure that you're hopping into someone, not because of any kind of money stuff, but because you truly feel like this person has something for me. And no matter what we talk about, just being around this person is going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very empowered place to make decisions from.
Right. That is. And once you begin to understand, you can't go back to sleep after you learn a few things about how you can live your life better, and finding that right person to kind of help you navigate collapsing time, learning all of the things that you wish you would have known for a long time before you figured it out. But it is so important. And I think that message in looking for the right person to help coach you and navigate you through that, I think it's critical, because you can spend your time and your hard-earned money and not get exactly the result that you need or you wanted. So, and you definitely want to be sure that you're not looking at all the flashy marketing, but really considering how that person fits with your personality and where you want to go. And really, you have to put in the work too, right? And that's a good sign of a good coach who's going to ask you to do the work, because you don't want to be relying on somebody. You want somebody to kind of help you learn to coach yourself and be more conscious of your behavior. And yeah, I mean, and I love, in researching about you, how you're dedicated to improving yourself. I mean, you constantly are on this journey to improve your own life, because if you want to help anybody else, you've got to take care of your own stuff, right?
Yeah.
We all have that, so what does that look like for you, your consistent self-improvement? Because I think people have this impression of like, okay, I get a coach and where I work on my mindset and then I'm good. But that's not how it works, right?
No, it's not. I think what's really important is that you have a vision for what it is that you want to live and experience, somewhere that you want to go to. And not only is that, important for like moving forward, but it gives you hope, it gives you inspiration. And I think it's really easy to get down in the dumps in the everyday hustle and bustle of things. And you're just doing the same things every day. You want things that are different for yourself, but you're not actually doing anything different. And so you get caught in this cycle where you're not living and experiencing what you want, but that's not going to change anytime soon. And so something that's really powerful, that was something that was really powerful for me, was I need someone who can help me see things differently. Hired the first coach, started reading the books, started, attending online events. And what I realized was this knowledge that I'm taking in is becoming part of how I operate. And now things are changing. And it wasn't, I didn't make $1 million in 4 months, and I didn't, it wasn't things like that. But all of a sudden I built my confidence. I wasn't changing my outfits 9 times before I went to leave the house. I felt good in my skin. I was able to speak. I used to be so shy. I couldn't talk to strangers. Like before my husband's accident, this conversation would not be happening. So it's these kind of things that like we're not necessarily setting as goals, but it changes your life. I easily get out of bed in the morning instead of dragging myself and going, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to leave my bed, blah, blah, blah. And, it's those little experiences, it all adds up and it makes your life so much richer. And when I started to notice that, I became a little bit addicted, and I'm not going to lie. So, I'm reading books all the time. I'm listening to the podcasts while I'm working out. I've attended some really powerful retreats, which for moms is like a beautiful idea. A women's retreat. Oof. I've jumped into all different kinds of coaching spaces, masterminds, one-on-one programs. I've done short programs. I've done long programs. And for me, it became about, it can always get better.
Right.
this life experience can always get
Mm-hmm.
better. And as I'm getting better, my little people at home are watching me. And now when I'm working
Yes.
out, my daughter comes down the
Mm-hmm.
stairs and she joins me. And now she's asking to meditate before she goes to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that was like this work is not just helping me. It's transforming my family. It's transforming everybody
Mm-hmm.
around me. Right. And
Right.
that's a really beautiful thing for a mother to feel.
Yeah, I don't know if you have ever heard of expander parenting, and it's kind of this concept where I think parents can get caught in this trap of making their children kind of a mold of them. And, we can't help but kind of project our life experiences. But really, truly, we should be working on expanding ourselves and showing them the potential and the way to self regulate and the way to control their emotions and find what it is that they're passionate about so they don't feel like they're living a life that they feel they can't escape from to please us. I mean, it's so important, and I love to hear that from moms about how starting a business has not only impacted them, but impacted their families. And how would you say that it has? I hear this limiting belief all the time that women cannot be entrepreneurs and a good mother. Like those two things aren't compatible. And honestly, I feel like so many times that not only does being an entrepreneur make me a better person, but a better parent, a better spouse. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
I've had the same experience. I mean, I think as women, we need to recognize that our children are not ours. They are not ours. We are having children. We are bringing new people into the world, and they are their own people. And so you can go through your life as a mother. I've seen this I'm from a small town, and I've seen this with a lot of the women there where they made their whole life about being a mother. And then guess what happened when the kids left? They had nothing and they couldn't let go. And then they became these, helicopter parents and these parents who were trying to be a part of their kid's life when their kid was trying to make
Get
their own
away.
way. And for some of those kids, they couldn't thrive as adults
Mm,
because they'd always been in mama's arms and
right,
now they don't have the skills to be on their own.
right,
I think one of the most powerful things to realize is that like your kids are not yours. You watch over them and guide them for a short period, and then they go off into the world and they are their own people. And that doesn't mean you don't have a relationship with them, but
right.
you have to have things in your life that are yours because there's going to come a time when you're gone. And, you know, you're not just a wife and a mother. You are a woman and you need things that are for the woman. The woman needs her things, her passions, her hobbies, her time. And if she doesn't have her stuff, then she starts to fade a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that fadedness is what she brings to her
Right.
relationships. And it doesn't feel good for her. And it doesn't feel as good as it could for all the people who would largely benefit from her being her energized, excited, lively self.
Mm-hmm.
We
What a-
have to have our own things as women. So having a business is having something for yourself, and it sends the message to your children that no matter what roles you have, no matter what responsibilities you have, you also have a responsibility to yourself. And we can't tell our kids, I want you, whatever makes you happy, you do it, and
Mhm.
then you're not doing it.
Right? Yes. Yes, we have to live it. We really
Right?
do.
So there's no guilt or shame in having a business and being a mom. In fact, I think it's one of the most powerful. Not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur, and
Right.
that's
Totally.
100% like.
Mm-hmm.
But if that is something that you're called to,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a gift to
Right.
devote time and energy to something that is worthwhile for you, and show your kids how to do that too.
Oh, I know. I mean, for me, the mother of two daughters, to show them an example of creating their own options is so important to me, to not have to wait their entire career like I felt that I did, for somebody to recognize I was good at something, or to pay me what I deserved, or to give me an opportunity that I know I deserved. I mean, to me, I don't think that there's anything more important that you could do to empower your children, in that way. If somebody is considering, well, can I really be a mom and start a business? Absolutely, you can. It's all just about how you approach it and how you plan it. Um, but how do you think your life would be different had you not taken that step? Let's say you just returned to your healthcare career after, you didn't have to devote so much time to your husband. How do you think that that would look like?
Mental health dive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was already going down a road that was not good, and
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't have gotten any better. And I think one of the worst things was you're isolated in that because you're not telling anybody that you're struggling. I didn't tell
Right.
anybody. I wrote a book after my accident and shared my story, and people were like, we didn't know that you were having such a hard time. And I never would have told anybody either. So it's one of those things where you start struggling alone in your career, and then you have kids, and it gets harder. And my confidence was already really low. It would have just gotten lower. Like I fear thinking about what I would have been experiencing, the struggle. It would have just been daily struggle
Right.
because I was not in a position where that I needed to be in. And at some point there would have been some kind of health situation where I might have had to make the same decision that I made after my husband's accident. And I don't know where that would go, but it's something that I think about every once in a while, that sometimes you have to make different decisions that are really scary because the plan A is
Mm-hmm.
not working.
Right. Yeah, there comes a time when you're just like, I can't do this anymore. And yeah, I was confronted with my own situation like that, where the needs of my children were outweighing the stress and of what was going on with my corporate job. But so you make this decision to start a coaching business. So walk me through some of those early limiting beliefs that you just had to deal with, because I think everybody feels like it's just me who has this. I mean, that's the reason for this podcast, because I started a business and I just was part of a podcasting group, and so many women were just didn't feel good enough. And I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. And everybody was going through it. So I like to share people's stories about how they felt when they started their business and how they kind of worked through that.
Sure. Um, when I started my business, personal development opened the door to and made me realize that there's so many things I could do, and there's a life that I could live, and I
Mm-hmm.
could be earning so much money, and I could be doing all kinds of things. And that's how I entered that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in very male dominated coaching spaces where it was like, you need to hustle, you need to do the work, you need to send 200 messages, cold messages to people you don't know. And if you don't do it, then you don't want it bad enough. There was a lot of shame.
And you had to get the black tight t-shirt and the
Yeah, and the blazers, and that was my introduction to the business world from healthcare, and it was very stressful because it didn't feel right to me.
right.
But the messaging was, if you don't do it, you don't want it. You don't want the results. You're lazy. And I struggled with that for a
Mm-hmm.
while. And,
Mm-hmm.
I would go to send a message and it didn't feel right to me. And so, here comes my first year in business. I didn't sign one client. I was stressed to the max because, now I've taken this chance. I have a family. Like, we had savings. We were okay, but I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And so I came into the end of my first year and I said, I'm going to get a coach, someone who seems to be doing really well in social media. And she had a very feminine kind of flair to her business. And I was like, that might be. And while the experience, I didn't get out of it what I was hoping, and it wasn't the best space to be in, what it taught me was there's also a feminine way of doing things, that there's not one way to be successful. And so that kind of expanded me a little bit. I started changing how I was doing things and I signed my first clients. But then as I started to move along, it became, I'm a mom and I don't have enough time. If I had all the time, if I had all day, like some of these young women doing these businesses, I would be on the beach sipping Mai Tais and having the money flow into my account, right? But that can't happen for me because I have kids. And I had to work through that. Yeah. So I purposely went out and I found women in the space who were millionaires and who were working like 3 to 10 hours a week. And I followed their stuff. And I slowly started to realize if they're doing it, it can be done. So, that this idea that I'm a mom, that's not what's getting in my way. Okay. So I keep going on my journey and the clients are still not flowing in quite like I had hoped. And I started to realize that I'm listening to all these experts who are telling me what to do. Stop doing that. That's so lame. You do it this way. This is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. Well, I did all the strategies. I did all of the homework. I did all of this stuff. It wasn't working because the truth about business is you have to find your own unique path. You have to listen to all the experts and take it with a grain of salt and figure out what feels good to me and how do I want to express myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. It's like I did a reel about my word for the year being good, and I got some flack in my DMs for that. Like, why wasn't it this more powerful? Like, you're going to dominate, you're going to, and it's just like, you know what? We have to get in touch with that intuition to decide what is good for us. Because yes, there is this trap to fall into. Everybody's telling you to do their thing and to use their services. And unless you really get grounded and understand what is good for you and what feels good for you, you're going to make all of the wrong decisions because there is no cookie cutter approach.
This strategy is not out there. Sorry. The strategy is not out there.
Right.
And the biggest mistake you can make when hiring a coach is expecting them to solve your problem, because their job is to help you solve your own problem. And, that's so huge. And then when we don't get the results, we go, oh, it's because I'm not good enough. I don't speak good enough and I don't know enough and I'm not attractive enough and my reels aren't entertaining enough and I don't have enough value. And it's a load of shit. Because your life experience, your lived experience is so valuable that you could help. There are people you could help, right? And you could be at the beginning of your journey, but you're one step ahead of them. And
right. We constantly tell ourselves we need to know everything. We have to have all the answers. We have to have all the certifications and degrees. And, honestly, I found myself with multiple degrees and multiple certifications in an industry, and I got very little respect. But more importantly, and I thought it was the industry's problem, but it was my problem. I left the industry thinking that it was the industry's problem. And the legal industry has lots of issues, but ultimately it was me not valuing myself and looking for that outside validation. And I think if you don't have that groundedness, you're going to continue on that cycle. You're 100% going to keep doing that. And you're going to just find yourself unhappy continually, and then not helping people and not sharing what it is, the breakthrough that you learned to finally realize that. So yes. I agree 1,000%. Yes. No, that's just, if there's anything that anybody can take away from this podcast, please understand that, you're not going to find that person who solves all of your problems. You've got to find that person who helps you solve your own problems. But so, yeah, I mean, I just, if you had any takeaway that you wanted somebody to, I have my takeaway, but if there was any piece of, a little nugget of knowledge that somebody listening to this podcast took away, what do you think that would be?
The biggest power move that you could make. And the thing is, to move towards your goals, you have to take action. You have to be a doer. Yeah. Not all the time. The biggest power move you can make is to know when to slow down and when to speed up, especially as a mom. You have to be very, very good at recognizing when it's time to break away, disconnect from the noise, disconnect from the hustle, and come back to yourself. And when you need to push on the gas, do the work, be laser focused, and hop in because you have the opportunity, kids napping, whatever. Accountability is your power move. Mm-hmm. So all this, these ideas about how like hustle, move, take action. Yes, but in bursts of time, not all the time. You shouldn't always be running. You shouldn't always be doing. You shouldn't be like task, productive. It's chipping away at your well-being. Know when to slow down, know when to speed up. And you're going to move faster than the people who are constantly pressing on the gas and burning out as they go.
Right. That's not sustainable. It's just not. And I've had to learn that lesson myself. It's so easy to get comparisonitis and you want to keep up with everybody else. And, whatever industry you're in, unfortunately, the algorithms then start sending you all the other people doing what you're doing. But you have to run your own race and again, get grounded and realize what feels good to you and when you need to take a break, because it's not sustainable. I mean, I know for me, somebody who's very empathic and just picks up on all of the emotions and everything of everybody I interact with, like I just have times where I have to shut down and reset. And I learned that. And you just have to listen to your body. It's so important. Well, yeah. Melissa, it's been wonderful talking to you. This time last year, I didn't even have a podcast yet. And to be able to share time with women doing incredible things and helping people realize a different level of consciousness and a different way of living. I mean, it's, I think I saw a statistic where maybe less than 10% kind of understand a different way of living. And so that can feel kind of lonely, even being an entrepreneur. It's like, is there anybody else who, hello?
Yeah. Where are my people? The people who get it.
Right. So, I mean, conversations like this are medicine for me because it just reassures me that, that I'm on the right path. There's other people out there, and we definitely have important messages that I get messages all the time about how it impacts, listeners. So I appreciate it so much. And I am sure that this conversation will help at least one person who listens. So where can everyone connect with you and find you? And you even have courses available. I would love to have had a little more time to talk about those because I think they're great. The meditation and breath work and money mindset, which is so important. So yeah, where can they connect with you?
My primary platform is Instagram. So you can find me at Melissa Jirovec. And we're in the process of a rebrand right now. So the next month, things are going to be looking very different.
Nice.
Very
All
excited
right.
about
Can't wait to see it.
that. Yeah. So I'd love to connect with anybody on there. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a very intimate space. So come on
Nice.
down.
And they can check out your courses and your books and everything that you're doing. It's just incredible. And I just appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Isn't Melissa wonderful? Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and your wisdom with us on the podcast. And if you would like to connect with Melissa and check out everything that she does, her books, her services, her website, her podcast, I'm going to leave all of that information in the show notes. And if you would like to connect with me, you can check out my website, mombusinesscoach.com. You can reach out to me on Instagram at angela.masciulli, Masciulli. And you can send me DMs there, or you can also send me an email at hello@mombusinesscoach.com. I have another amazing mompreneur on the podcast next week. Next week's episode, bring the tissues, the synchronicities, the connection. Oh my goodness, it was a really emotional interview at times. And I can't wait to bring you that interview next week. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We launch an episode every Monday, and you can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. It's totally free. It's called subscribe or follow, and you'll get a little notification every time a podcast episode is published. Thank you again for joining me. I am so grateful for your time and support for the show. I can't wait to talk to you again next week. And until then, remember that not only are you good enough, you're probably overqualified. This is your host, Angela Masciulli of the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast. Talk to you next week. Bye.